Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of Unfair Advantage, where we explore the strategies, insights, and methodologies to give you an unfair advantage. I'm your host, Mona Hilton, CEO of Advantage Anywhere, and we are so proud to bring you topics and guests that will stretch your mind and grow your business. Now, if you've missed any of the amazing episodes of Unfair Advantage, or maybe you just want to binge watch on topics that will actually improve your business and your life, check out the Unfair Advantage recordings at www.unfairadvantage.com/videos. And be sure to subscribe to our ever-growing YouTube channel for the very latest in information and tips and news on the hottest topics and leadership issues. Well, folks, now, as you know from watching other episodes of Unfair Advantage, we regularly introduce you to great influencers who challenge the status quo and make an impact. But today, I am overjoyed to introduce, or for some of you, reintroduce you to someone who totally breaks the influence meter. Now, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you knew the name Zig Ziglar. He was truly the godfather of motivational speaking. And he was an inspiration for almost every public speaker since then. Zig was so unique. He had a masterful way of telling compelling stories that not just kept you on the edge of your seat, but made a point and made you think or rethink how you looked at events and activities. Zig was really one of a kind. And if you ever had the privilege of seeing him speak live in person like I did, it made such an impression on you that you never forgot it. So it was a really sad day in 2012 when Zig passed away. I actually remember watching his memorial service live and wondering if I was watching the end of an era. But fortunately, I wasn't. The Zig Ziglar's legacy lives on. Tom Ziglar, his son, had a lot of wisdom. He didn't just try to replicate his father's work. He actually expanded horizontally, making the Ziglar message into a movement through coaching, leadership training, development, transformational experiences, videos, and so many other things. And thanks to Tom's vision, the Ziglar experience isn't just limited to watching someone on the stage, but he's influencing business leaders and up-and-coming leaders around the world with a message of hope. His message is to transform your life, your leadership, and your legacy. What Tom has done is nothing short of remarkable. And I'm so honored to have Tom on Unfair Advantage today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tom. I can't tell you how excited I am.
Mona, thank you for having me on. It's just a blessing to be here, and I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today.
I am too. So, Tom, I know it's cliche, and I know everybody asks you this question, but I have to ask you, what was it like growing up in the Ziglar household? What was it? Were you under the microscope all the time? Did you realize what an influence Zig had across the world? What was that like? Give us an idea.
Yeah, so, as good as Dad was on stage, he was even better off stage.
Wow.
So he was amazing. And I could remember from, just being 8, 9, 10 years old, we'd be somewhere and people would come up to us at a restaurant and they would stop and talk to Dad for a minute, and it never felt like an intrusion because they were coming up and they just said, they'd say, Zig or Mr. Ziglar, I just want to tell you, you impacted my life. You changed my life. And so when you hear a story like that, it never gets old, right? It's never like a celebrity or an athlete where somebody's just trying to get a selfie and, because the moments for them, whereas the moments that we had with Dad in the public eye, the public wanted to give back. They wanted to express gratitude. And I didn't really understand, how influential he was until later on when I started working in the company and seeing literally the thousands of testimonials and letters that we got from people whose marriage had improved, their career had taken off, their health had gone to the next level, whatever the case was. Dad just had this knack for inspiring and motivating people to take action. And when you take action, you get results. So, yeah, I never felt under the microscope. It was cool. It was the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I was one of those people who he influenced. I actually, to this day, have so many of his books in my library, and I reference them back because they're timeless. They never go out of style, his messages. Do you feel like when you were young, did you travel with him a lot? Did you get to see him publicly and privately, or?
Yeah, there was a couple of things. When during the summer, especially when I wasn't in school, if he had a big convention that he was speaking at, or somewhere where it might be 3, or 4 days, I got to go with him, and I would see these huge crowds, and we would sometimes we would finish up and we would be going back to the room in the hotel, and some of these hotels are massive, and so there'd be hundreds of people waiting to take the elevators back to their room, right? Because the whole show or the whole convention let out at the same time. And, just the conversations he would have on the way there. And then when I started working with him, I did travel with him from time to time, and that was always fantastic. I can remember a green room experience. So the green room is kind of backstage, and it's where people who are going to be speaking or presenting go beforehand to just kind of have a quiet place. And this company, they had a little reception area backstage, and it was all the executives. And so I think they were in oil and gas, if I remember right, because I'm early 20s. And very, very successful company. The executives were very successful, and in the conversation, a lot of these people, these executives, were using cuss words in their conversation, and many of them had come up through the ranks. They'd been military, then they'd worked in the oil fields, and then they'd learned everything, and they had good people skills, and so they advanced. And so Dad and I had a moment, and I said, because we never cussed, I never heard him say one bad word in my whole life. So that's just not what we did. And I said, what's up with all this language? And Dad looked at me and he said, look, he said 2 things. He said, never judge someone by the language they use. You can always learn something, and these are really smart people. And then he said, and at the same time, isn't it a shame that they're using language that might turn somebody off and they don't even know it? Right. And so even in those kind of one-on-one times, Dad was always looking for the point or the principle or things like that. And I never forgot it. I've always thought, gosh, language in the words that we use is such a gift. And why would we ever use a word that somebody could receive in an unintended way? And then I've traveled around the world, and in some countries, cussing is a sport. It's like the common thing there. And so I believe, granted, there are some cultural differences and things like that, but wherever you are, why not use the best language possible that will inspire and motivate and give people the best chance for taking action?
Mm-hmm. That's a great lesson. I've never heard you tell that story before, but it's awesome how wholesome he always was. And therefore, you could bring children to his presentations and seminars. You could bring anyone and never have to worry about offending or having to cover anyone's ears. And that's amazing. And unfortunately, it's not as common anymore. So you talked about lessons. So what are some of the greatest lessons that you got? You just shared one privately, but what are some of the greatest lessons that you got from your dad?
Yeah, there's a couple. The biggest lesson that I learned from Dad was to choose your input. He had my favorite quote of his growing up was, "You are what you are and where you are because of what's gone into your mind. And you can change what you are. You can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind."
Wow.
And that just really hit me. And so later on in life, I kind of made my own quote, and it's kind of food related because I like food. And it just said, what you feed your mind determines your appetite. And it's both literal and figurative. A couple of years ago, a study came out, and I used to tease about this. Like 10 years ago, I was teasing about this. What you feed your mind determines your appetite. So what you need to do is wake up every day and say, kale, 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 kale. I love kale. Right? Well, a few years ago, a study came out, and they got some control groups, and they had one of the control groups say, I love kale 100 times a day. And within 3 weeks, that group started craving kale. So isn't that amazing? And so what we usually do is we give ourselves the opposite, right? We tell ourselves the wrong thing. We say, don't sit on the couch all day, don't eat the cheesecake, and don't tell Martha what you really think. And then of course, what do? We sit on the couch all day, we tell Martha what we really think, and we eat the cheesecake. And so the way the mind works, and what Dad knew even before the research was out, is that the mind really focuses on what we tell it to do, and it doesn't really understand don't or do. All it remembers is cheesecake. And so when we choose the right input, right, when we choose the things that we want to become and what we want to do and where we want to go, and that's all we focus on, that's the new messaging that gets wrapped into it. And I remember one time, I'm sitting there going to the mall, and I look back and my car is way out in the parking lot, and there's all these empty spots between my car and the mall entrance. Now, my pattern was, I'm like the parking lot vulture, right? I'll circle until I find the closest spot. It's like a game to me, right? How close can I get? And for some reason, on this day, I was just, kind of in that zone where I'm going to the mall. I found a spot, and I walk in, and there's like 30 spots empty between me and the door. And I said, why did I do that? And then I remembered about 3 weeks early, I had started saying, I'm getting fitter and fitter every day in every way. Okay. Just over and over again. And so that gave my mind an instruction to look for ways to get fitter. Well, we've all read that the easiest way to burn a few extra calories every day is to park a little further away from the door, to take the stairs instead of the elevator. And even though I knew that, and I'd read that 100 times, I'd never done it. Right? So what we choose to feed our mind determines our appetite. And so when you choose these things, it really changes it. The other great lesson that I would say is, I was speaking, and there's a little chance for questions, and somebody raised their hand and they said, what's the one thing that made Zig Ziglar who he is? Like, what is the one thing that he did that made him the person that we all recognize as this incredible thought leader, influencer, speaker, author? And of course, there's 100 things, but I had to boil it down to one. And so here's the one thing. Every day, the first 2 or 3 hours of the day, he would read and research and pray and study God's word and read books from experts, with the sole purpose, so here's his motive, of learning something new, so that he could internalize it and simplify it, so that he could share it with someone else for their benefit. So just imagine, how different would your life be if you just took 5 minutes first thing in the morning to learn something new, a thought, an idea, you internalize it and simplify it, put it in your own words, and then you shared it with someone else for their benefit. And the sharing could be as easily as a text. Everybody listening to this probably has 10 or 15 people that, are kind of on your text list. So, what if every day you texted one of them, hey, I was thinking about you, and you shared your thought. I'm grateful for you. Have a great day, right? And that's all you did. how different of a human being would you be at the end of a year if you had that daily practice? And of course, when you start a practice like that, even if you only start with 5 minutes, eventually it starts to grow on you. I'm sure that the first time Dad said, "You know what, I'm gonna start my day off right and do all this stuff." I'm sure he didn't do it for 3 hours. I'm sure he probably only did it for 20 or 30 minutes before all the pressures of the day built up. But the more you do that in the morning, the more impact you have and the more you can focus on the priorities, which then expands your influence and actually gives and creates more time for you to do the things that are important. So those are a couple of the lessons. What you choose to input into your mind determines everything. And how you start your day, and if the motive is to help other people and you have a way of doing that, it'll change your life.
Wow, that's brilliant. So could it really be that simple, Tom? It comes down to what you put in and what you speak out. I mean, even scripture talks about what as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So
Yeah, yeah,
God,
absolutely.
yeah, and what if we all did that? I mean, we're all focused on the negative and the negative news and all the things that are wrong. But what if not even all of us, but most of us did that? I mean, what impact could we all have on our society?
I know it's one of those things it's simple and easy, and because it's easy to do, it's also easy not to do. Uh,
Mhm.
one of the statements I heard recently was, never let your circumstances determine how you treat someone else.
Mm.
Oh, now that's a high standard, but isn't it true, right?
Mhm.
And and so what we see is a world where their current circumstances totally govern how they treat everyone else and themselves,
Mhm.
right? So, gosh, Lee, I had a bad day, so I'm going to celebrate, and they do things that make the next day worse, right?
Mhm.
So, instead of saying, gosh, I got to use today so that I can grow a little bit and be better tomorrow than I am today. So what if, no matter where you are in life, what if you just said, I'm gonna do a little bit more today to grow so that tomorrow I'm a better and different person than I am today. And if we just did that little bit every day, how much different will we be at the end of the year?
Mhm.
People overestimate what they can do in the short term and they underestimate what they can do in the long term. And so this is long-term thinking.
Mhm. And as you're talking, I keep hearing the word intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. You don't just fall into it. In my mind, it's a decision you make to change how you think, what you put in, how you talk, how you treat people. Intentional.
It's 100% intentional, and Dad was incredibly intentional with everything that he did. There was a reason behind it. So he, besides being able to tell a great story, and he was incredible on the stage, and he had the body motion and the voice inflection and all that. Whenever he found something that was really good and worked, he dug into it to make sure it was in alignment with, God's truth, scientific truth, psychological. He had people in every area of expertise who would run things by because he never wanted to go out there and present something that would actually end up being a detriment to them down the road.
Mhm. Speaking of which, he had a key to success I'd love for you to break down for us. And it's on your website. It's part of your message everywhere that you can have everything in life you want if you can just help enough other people get what they want. Would you break that down for us a little bit, Tom?
You bet. And this is his most famous quote. I get emails almost daily where the tagline will be that quote. I go to company websites, and on their company website, it'll say, you can have everything in life you want, right? So this is a well-known quote, but this is actually the roadmap to success. In this quote, there's 5 questions in this quote that if you answer, it will give you the road that you need to take in order to create the life that you want to create. And so here it is. The first question you got to ask yourself, you can have everything in life you want. So what do you want? What are the things in your life that you want? And then you write that list down, all the dreams and goals and desires, everything you've ever wanted, right? You write that down and you get real clarity, right? You start digging into it. And then you ask the second question, which is, why do you want that? I said, I want this, I want this car, I want this home, I want financial security, I want to put my kids through college. Well, why do you want it? And you've got to have and be able to write a clear sentence of why you want it. Because if you can't, then there's a good chance that that's not really what you want. And the reason this is important is no matter what it is that we want, especially if it's big and meaningful, like starting a business or creating a legacy or supporting a ministry in a big way, whatever it is that you want, if you don't know the why, when the obstacles come, you'll give up, right? So you got to know the why. So you can have everything in life you want if you can just help enough other people get what they want. So the third question is, who are the other people? Who are the people you're going to help? So if you've got a business, if you're a parent, if you're a volunteer, who are the people you're going to help? And you've got to be really clear in that, because if you don't know who you're going to help, well, how are you going to get what you want? Because you only get what you want after you help other people get what they want. So who are the people you're going to help? And then the fourth question is, well, what do they want? And, I see this all the time where people get confused with what they sell. Okay. And I use the word sell with a lot of pride. And so in our business, we're a training. I mean, if somebody says, or somebody says, what does Ziglar do? Somebody else might say, oh, well, they're a training company. They do speaking and sales and leadership training and all that. But here's the problem. Nobody buys training. They buy the results of it, right? They buy the product of it. They buy the performance. And so what do people want? Well, in my opinion, our customers want true performance, right? They want the ideal accomplishment of a goal, aspiration, or objective that benefits everyone involved, right? They want balanced success. They want to have great health and great family relationships and financial security and success in the business life. And so whatever market you serve, what do they want? So let's just say you're a carpet cleaner. Do they want clean carpet, or do they really want a place where memories are made, where they feel comfortable having guests and Thanksgiving dinner and, something that gives them that? Yeah. So we know what they want, and then we kind of dig into why they want it. And then the fifth question there that comes out of this quote is, how are you going to help them get what they want? Right? How are you going to help the people you serve get what they want? I have a friend and mentor. His name is Rabbi Daniel Lapin. And he says this, it's pretty cool. He says, God is never happier with his children than when they're solving the problems of his other children. And so this is why this is why I get really excited. If you're a business owner, if you're in sales, when you solve a problem for one of God's children, the creator of the universe smiles, right? So why shouldn't you get excited about selling and marketing and bringing new people in as customers? Because you're solving problems. And that's a powerful thing. Incidentally, in Hebrew, there's two words in Hebrew for the word sell, okay? And I don't speak Hebrew, and this is another lesson I learned from Rabbi Lapin. But one of the words is kind of a common everyday word, and it means like transaction. So, you go into the marketplace and you buy some groceries. It's just kind of a transaction. And in Hebrew, every letter has a numerical value. And every letter and every word has a moral value. So there's some words that have high moral implications and some that are just everyday words. It's an interesting language. Well, there's another word for sell, for selling or sell in Hebrew, and it has a high moral value. And it means to look into the future of the person, anticipate the pain or problem they're going to have, and then help them avoid that.
Wow.
Now, isn't that like a moral obligation to go out and sell? Right? I mean, it's like you're solving the problems of God's children. You're preventing future pain and problems for them by when you do it. So if you've got if you got a place that fixes cars, or you clean carpets, or you build houses, or whatever job that you have, you're in IT, you support in other areas. If you can help somebody avoid pain and problem, that is a powerful thing. So step into what you do with a lot of confidence.
I love that, because selling and sales is associated with a negative thing or harassment or what have you, and kind of a sleazy connotation. And when you think about it, that you're helping God's children solve their problems, it gives it a wholesome meaning and a wholesome purpose for doing it. I love that.
Yep.
And I think if we, like you said earlier about why you were talking about why you do what you do, if your why is big enough and you know that that's what it is, then it makes it easy and it makes it pure to help people. I love that.
It's the motive. It's the motive behind it.
Tom, that's so good. I've never heard it said that way before. That's really good. You mentioned your coaching and what you do with your, leaders or coaches, is what you told me earlier. Explain a little bit about that. What does your coach leadership look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I'll give you I wrote a book called 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. It came out at the end of 2021, and I studied the impact that the pandemic had on business and on people. People's core values really changed in that first year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Great Resignation, and people were quitting their jobs, and what they were really saying was that they wanted to work somewhere that gave their life meaning and purpose and value. Millions of people went home. They watched loved ones get sick. Many people lost friends and family members. And then they looked at their job and they said, wow, am I supposed to be doing this? Does it make my heart sing? And so many of them quit. And the sad part is they were running from something instead of running to something. They hadn't quite figured out their why yet. They just knew it wasn't here. And so what we talk about with leaders or coaches is we have a saying, we want you to be a coach leader. And so let me kind of give you what I call the old school traditional leader and what a coach leader is. So the old school traditional leader, we call them the T-Rex leader, right? And so if we've been around, if we've had a few birthdays, we've either worked for somebody like this or watched them in action. So a T-Rex leader is command and control, do it because I said so. They lead with fear. They have positional authority that they haven't really earned. And so the T-Rex has really sharp teeth, right? A big head. And so a T-Rex leader, they'll bite your head off. They'll intimidate. But they also have really short arms, right? And so that means that they like to keep everything close. They like to control all the information. And when you think about it, most people lead the way they were led. And so T-Rex leaders, they were just raised and taught by a T-Rex leader. I mean, that's and so when the book came out, we coined the phrase a coach leader. And a coach leader is more of a guide. A coach leader leads by asking great questions. Coach leaders ask the questions that reveal what the individual team member wants to do, and then they co-create a plan for them to accomplish it. It's all about communication, and it's a whole different way. A coach leader is not weak. A coach leader doesn't let people run around. I mean, think about coaches who know what they're doing. They put the players on the field that are prepared and who are ready to make the play, right? So it doesn't mean we're saying, you know, we're going to let people do what they want, when they want, how they want. It's just a different approach to it. And so the 10 leadership virtues for disruptive times, the book is evergreen. So this is the good news for our audience today. Disruption is only going to increase in intensity and frequency. Right? That's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so why is that good news? Well, if I'm a coach leader, my mindset is I love disruption because my team, my company, my business, we're all about learning and growing. And the more disruption there is, the more opportunity we have to serve other people. Mm-hmm. Our strength is our ability to meet people's needs and to grow and learn and to adapt. Our strength isn't, well, we've done it this way for 20 years, so we need to keep doing it that way. No, our strength is when the change comes, wow, we're ready for that. And so the coach leader, they have this mindset and they walk out the 10 virtues that we talk about in the book, and then they lead through coaching people, which is the third piece. And I see you've got AI disruption and Zig GPT. So that's like one of the biggest disruption out there is the artificial intelligence. Have you used artificial intelligence, by the way?
Every day. Every day.
How do you use it?
I use it for all kinds of things. I brainstorm with it. I have it rewrite. I have it do a research that would take me days. I have it do in seconds. There's in every area. I think AI is awesome when put in the hands of people who are going to use it for good.
So we're on exactly the same page. Exactly the same
Glad
page.
to hear that.
So here's the big picture of AI, and this is what I believe. AI is simply a tool that compresses the time it takes to get repetitive task, data collection, all these things, all the busy work that we do, it's just normal. It gets it done in seconds instead of hours, days, or weeks. So what does that mean? It means now that if we know how to use artificial intelligence, we have more time to do the two things that artificial intelligence will never be able to do. And that's to build relationships with other people. So let's say I'm in sales. Well, right now, if I talk to 20 people a day in sales, it's probably because 50% of my time is research and due diligence and doing paperwork and getting all that stuff. Well, instead of taking 4 hours, AI is going to compress that all down to 30 minutes. So what does that mean? It means I can build deeper, more meaningful relationships with those 20, or I can talk to 30 or 40 people a day. Right? So that's the power of AI. So AI will never build relationships. And the other thing is this. AI does not have wisdom.
I've said that.
Yeah. So here's the big deal. If you're north of 40, I've got great news for you. And this is a flip. This is a mindset shift, okay? If you go out to the general public in the US or even around the world today, the older the survey responder is, the more concerned and negative they are about AI they believe it's going to have a negative impact on their life.
Really?
And that belief is based on, well, you know, you got to be young to understand technology. I mean, think of the last 20 years with software and new systems being put in and people getting close to retirement. And they're like, oh, I don't want to learn that. I just want to do what I've been doing. You know, you young people can figure out that, you know, and we see it, right? But here's the thing. Our brain mirrors our physical ability. And so here's something that's interesting. almost every Nobel Peace Prize winner, award-winning mathematician, economist, musician, tech company founder, all of these great innovators throughout history, they did their primary work in their 20s. And after their 20s, very few of them went on to do anything else. The reason is when you're young, your brain is very elastic and it can handle and juggle like hundreds of items. And so that's how these innovations happen with young people. Well, as you age, just like athletics, most people's athletic abilities kind of peaks in their late 20s, early 30s, and then it continues to decline the rest of their life. Well, as our brain ages and we get into our 30s, our ability to handle multiple things is not what it used to be. And so these great leaders who led in their 20s in a certain way, they no longer have the capacity to do that. So their brain elasticity, their ability to juggle, all those things, it's going down over time, but it's being replaced with something. And that something is even more powerful, and that's called wisdom. Okay, so when you age, what do? You get experience, you get wisdom. And so here's the good news. If you're north of 40, you actually have an incredible advantage against people younger than you. Because if you learn to leverage AI so that it gets you the data you need, you can make wise decisions from that data, from that information, whereas young people can't because they don't have the experience yet.
Wow.
Right? And so if you're like 60, you should just realize that artificial intelligence and all the evolutions of it that are going to come out, they now allow you to compete with somebody who's 25 from a brain capacity level, because you can let AI do all the grunt work of gathering the data and juggling and the 1,000 things, and then you bring that information back, and wisdom can tell you what decisions you need to make. So you have Zig GPT. So what we've done is, everybody knows what Chat GPT is, or should by now, is we built a little app to help our coaches. And so let me show you how we use AI to help us. When we do a coaching session, it's usually on a Zoom call, and it's usually recorded. And so what we do is we take that audio of that coaching session, and our coaches will drop it into Zig GPT. And all Zig GPT does is it links into Chat GPT, but it's able to put in a couple of hours of audio instead of the limiters that are there now. So it'll take that coaching call, it will immediately transcribe it. It takes about 5 minutes to transcribe an hour-long conversation. And then we have all these prompts built into it. So the coach can prompt it, and it can say, hey, do 1,000-word summary of this call, write out the 5 most important key learning steps, identify the 3 commitments that individual made, and then the 5 action steps they can take to fulfill each one of those commitments. And it will instantly create a PDF. And then with all that information in there, the 1,000-word summary, all those things, you can ask it anything, it'll do all that. And then the coach can add in their own comments to it, right? You can add to it if you want to. And so now you're done, and you can send it to the client along with the physical transcript and a link to the video, all in one place. So it gives the client a higher level of understanding of what just happened, an action plan to take forward, and it saves the coach about 30 minutes, because a great coach is going to do all that anyway. After the call, they're going to write out their notes and craft an email and put all that together. And so AI is actually going to save that coach more time. So what did I say about the tool? It saves you time and makes you more effective so that you can build deeper and more meaningful relationships. So this is just one of the ways that we're using it, and it's going to get easier and easier as we go along to do that.
Yeah, that's brilliant too, because now you're adding the coach's wisdom on top of all that data, and you get the best of both worlds. I have to tell you, Tom, you made my day because I've turned 29 a time or two or 10. So I look at younger people and say, how do I compete? And that's exactly the answer. That's what we all need. And that's, again, brilliant. I'm actually speechless. And for those who know me, they know I'm rarely speechless, but this is so amazing. I listened to you talk, and I followed your father, obviously, but the way that you are packaging information is so practical, so almost tangible, things that people can use. And, we talked before about your father's legacy. Tell us a little bit about what you want to do with Ziglar Coaching, or I know you've kind of touched on that. Is there anything else you want to add to what you're doing with Ziglar Coaching?
Yeah, let me just wrap up the AI and straight into coaching. Coaching is all about asking great questions. Being effective with AI is all about asking great prompts.
Yes, I've said that too.
So isn't it interesting that, business and the economy was all about muscle? Okay, so until really about 40 or 50 years ago, it was about, how much work a farmer could do, right? And then it switched to, it's all about brain. It's like technology and how smart you are. And so this, the STEM and all that approach. And now AI is going to take away the workload for a huge majority of the brain work, and the economy is about to become the heart and relationship economy.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. And I read an article in the Wall Street Journal, not the Wall Street, New York Times today that kind of used some of that language, but it's what we've been saying for a long time, since we got involved with really researching AI and how it can help us. And so what do coaches do? Coaches ask questions. And when you're asked great questions, the receiver of the question thinks they care about me. And so in the book Trust, I'll think of his name in a second. Dr. Henry Cloud, Dr. Cloud. He says there's 5 keys to developing trust, and the first one is this: we trust people who understand us. I mean, think of the people who you really trust. In the back of your mind, you're like, they get who I am. They get me. They understand me. Well, what do coaches seek to do first? And that's to understand who that person is. And so at Ziglar, we're all in on coaching. We have 3 different coaching programs where we license people to coach our materials. In the Ziglar coaching system, this is more of a life coaching, and we have 2 programs that we license people to become a Ziglar coach, in the Choose to Win and the See at the Top. And the See at the Top is based on Dad's book, See at the Top, that came out 50 years ago this year. But the principles are timeless. And then the other coaching program is our coach leadership coaching program, Coach Leader Coach. And that's more geared, the first ones are like life coach. Coach leadership is really for either as a participant, you want to learn how to coach your people. So you might contact Ziglar and say, hey, tell me about your coach leadership program. Or you're a coach, more in the executive coach, and you want to work with leaders, and you specifically want to coach leaders how to coach their people. So those are the programs. Here's another thing that's interesting is the coach leadership program. We have a big client, and the very top end, high corporate. And the first session I did with them, there was about 25 people in the room, and a lot of them flew in on their private jets. Okay. So next month and for a few months, I'm going to be doing 5 different coach leadership programs for the Amish. And these are 2-day classes, and they're going to be driving up in their buggies. And so I have this saying, from Bombardier to buggies, right? Well, in July, I got invited to Vietnam, and I did 2 one-day leadership programs in Vietnam. And so the capitalists in the US love it, and the communists in Vietnam love it, because the leadership principles, the virtues that we treat each other with, and how we help somebody grow to become more effective tomorrow than they are today, that's universal. And the glue that holds all that together is the 10 virtues come right out of 1 Corinthians 13. That's the love chapter. So if you've ever been to a Christian wedding, you probably heard 1 Corinthians 13 read. And all we did for the book is we changed the wording of how we describe those 10 virtues. They're the same virtues. It's just a little bit more business context, a little bit more Ziglar context. But if people are wondering, well, why does it work? You don't have to wonder. It's based on truth, right? People don't like to be told what to do. They like to be asked if they have an idea of the best way to do it. And then when we ask them, how would you like to do this? And they give us if we're the leader and they start to give us their plan, we can nudge them in the right direction and ask them other questions that lead them to the right point. Now they've learned it, and now they own the plan. Why? Because they created the plan. And that's a powerful thing. And so great leaders understand that their leadership means that they're developing people who are better than them. Dad said, if you're irreplaceable, you're unpromotable. So you want your reputation in the future, right? In the heart relationship economy where we're going, your reputation isn't how good you are with technology. It's not how good you are with understanding the complexities of strategy and all that stuff. That's going to be like turnkey stuff with AI. Your reputation needs to be, I develop people so that they unlock their potential and are more effective tomorrow than they are today, both as team members and as future leaders. That person can work anywhere in the world for any company and start their own company if they like. I mean, that's what it's all about.
That's powerful because it's so universal. It applies, like you said, everywhere, from one end of the globe to the other, from the top of the ranks to the bottom of the ranks and everything in between. So good. So good. You kind of talked about legacy again, and we started with your father's legacy. I kind of heard a little bit about what you want your legacy to be, but so Tom, you've done so much. You have influenced so many people. What do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, so let me give you my mission statement and my legacy statement. So my mission statement is to create the atmosphere that allows you to become the person God created you to become. And so whether I'm speaking or training or doing a podcast or Zoom meeting or meeting somebody one-on-one, I want to create an atmosphere that allows that person to step into and become the best version of themselves, to be the person I believe they were created to be. So at the end of 2022, no, actually this was when the book came out at the end of 21, I said, uh-oh, the corporate world is really going to like this book. And I'd kind of made a decision that I like working with business owners, small and medium-sized business, rather than the big political, landscape of these big companies. Just because I don't like politics. I don't like, decisions that take 2 years to make. I like somebody who can say yes or no. And I realized that this book was going to really appeal to these larger companies. And I said, okay, I'm ready. So God, whatever you want. And then I asked myself a question: what legacy do I want to leave? And so for everybody listening to this, just know that if you were to die today, your legacy is done, right? Whatever you put in play is in play. And so I thought about that. Okay, so my legacy up until today is it is what it is. So then I asked the second question is, okay, if I've got 20 more years, what's the legacy I want to leave in the next 20 years? How can I build on what I have and leave so my intentional legacy that I'm working on is to equip and prepare the next generation of leaders. And when I talk about the next generation of leaders, it doesn't mean young leaders. It means leaders who all of a sudden understand the way we led doesn't work anymore. We need to lead in a new way. And so that's coach leadership. And so there's a couple of ways I walk that out. It's through our coach leadership program, teaching leaders, but it's also working with coaches and equipping them because they have impact and influence with people across the board. And so it's interesting, a couple of our top coaches got together and we were trying to define what success is. And so from our perspective, because we have hundreds of coaches under the Ziglar coaching system, success to us is our grandkids, meaning it's awesome when a coach comes in, right? And that might be our child. I'm using a bad metaphor. But when they coach somebody, right, when that coach is successful and they impact somebody else, that's what success is for us. And that's what Ziglar's all about, is equipping coaches and coach leaders and speakers and presenters to make an impact in their community and their business that impacts those people, and it just kind of ripples. So we're all about legacy. That's on the forefront of what we do, and that's what I love about the foundation that Dad laid. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I love just listening to you speak. You practice what you preach. You ask yourself intentional questions to dig deep, and that's so good. I've been taking notes, as you can tell. I have a ton of notes as far as what some of the key takeaways were. And my next question is going to be, if there's one thing you want people to remember, what would it be? I'm looking through my notes. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Is there one thing that hopefully they won't forget anything they've heard? They can watch this over and over and over again. But is there one takeaway you want to make sure people get from this?
Yeah. So if you've made it all the way to here, I would just go back to that quote. You can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And ask yourself, what do you want? Why do you want it? Who are you going to help? What do they want? And how am I going to help them? If you just take the time to do that, then you will be well on your way. And if you're a coach or a speaker or ever wanted to do that, or you want to learn how to coach your leaders, how to coach their people, if you want to learn that, then that's what we do, is we help you do that. So if one of the things you want is to develop the greatest leadership team in the world, we help companies do that.
Right. And you've generously offered us your free life-changing tools, 5 of them actually. Folks, if you hear nothing else, go to the website, watch some of the videos, download these free tools, and this link will be in the show notes, as well as how to connect with Tom. This was brilliant. I just don't have words for how much wisdom that you shared with us, Tom. And I'm so grateful for your time and for your insights and for what you're doing and the impact. And I just thank you, because I know how much the world, I say often, we are drowning in information and starving for wisdom. and you are feeding us wisdom, and we're so grateful for that. I personally am very grateful for that. So folks, right now, his contact information is on the screen. Please reach out to Tom. Please take advantage of all these resources. Follow him, get the tools. It will change your life. And that's said trite in so many different ways, but this is truly life-changing. So Tom, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your commitment to legacy and all the things that you are providing, not just today's leaders, but tomorrow's leaders as well. It's so multi-generational what you're doing, and we're very grateful. Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate having you so much, and look forward to watching what you're doing next and following you and seeing what you're up to.
Thank you so much, Mona. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, folks, don't forget to get this information, and we'll see you on the next episode of Unfair Advantage. Have a great day.